Hello and good morning. It's so good to be here with you guys, making sure we're live on Facebook as well. All right, so we have a lot to cover today in week 3, so let's get right into it. Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for the last 3 weeks. Thank you for this new year. Thank you for the things that you've revealed to us. Thank you for being who you are. We love you, we appreciate you, we honor you. And let these words in this book reveal everything that it is you want us to know. In Jesus' name. It's so good to be here with you guys. And I'm so excited because we have a lot to cover today. So we are in week 3 and we are going to be covering a lot of different things. So covenant and calling, and that's really the theme for this week. So it'll be Genesis 12 through 25. And this is really about obedience that's activating promise. And God reveals purpose progressively, not all at once. And I think that, not him revealing the full map of everything, he just reveals the next step. I think a lot of times we get caught up in wanting to know, okay, well, what's going to happen in the next 3 months? What's going to happen in the next 6 months? And fully trusting in him. As we cover the verses today, Abraham's story, he's going to teach us about that faith is not a passive belief, but it's an act of obedience. And our calling isn't discovered through waiting for clarity. It's revealed through movement. And you don't walk after you understand, right? You're not going to walk by this faith. Once you have all of the answers, you understand while you walk. And last week, I had went through verses 4 through 10, and I had left 11. And very similar to today, 12 through 25 in Genesis, I'm reading from the NLT version. I'm going to pick up a little bit from 11 so that we have some context as we're going into this. Some of these verses, like in 11, there is a talk of the line of Abram before he became Abraham. So if I don't cover all of it, please, I encourage you to read thoroughly through it for you to truly understand the descendant line of Abram. So in chapter 11 of Genesis, the Tower of Babel. At one time, all the people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words. As the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. They began saying to each other, "Let's make bricks and harden them with fire." In this region, bricks were used instead of stone, and tar was used for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world." But the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower of people were building. "Look," he said, "the people are united, and they all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other." In that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world, and they stopped building the city. That is why the city was called Babel, because that is where the Lord confused the people with the different languages. In this way, he scattered them all over the world. I think that's really important to understand where all the different languages in the world come, right? And I was thinking about this last night as I was laying down, and everything that we've read from 1 to now, which isn't very much, right? But God is very close to the proximity of all of these people, right? In the very beginning, it was the beginning of mankind. So he was there through every single step, and he was there, and people really, really heard him. And Adam and Eve even walked with him, right? Then, of course, his heart breaks and he has to get rid of everybody on earth but Noah. And so this is the descendants of Noah, right? And all the people starting to repopulate the world again. But God is still very much involved. There's not billions of people around the world yet. So he is still very much involved in everything that is going on. And I think for us, it's a way to truly understand that, we hear and see God through the Holy Spirit. He was truly there through these moments. So for me, it was something to think about. And I was like, wow, they got to experience something that is completely different than what we experience. So the line descended from Shem to Abram. So this is the account of Shem's family. And it talks about how Shem was 100 years old. He became the father of Arphaxad. After that, Shem lived another 500. Arphaxad was 35, became the father of Shelah. Shelah was 30, became the father of Eber. Eber was 34, became the father of Peleg. Peleg was 30, became the father of Reu. And Reu was 32, became the father of Sherug. And Sherug was 30, became the father of Nahar. And Nahar was 29, became the father of Terah. And Terah was 70, he became the father of Abram, Norah, and Haran. So through that descendant line came Abram. This is the account of Terah's family. Terah was the father of Abram, Norah, and Haran was the father of Lot. But Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living. Meanwhile, Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sahar, and the name of Norah's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Iscai were daughters of Nahor's brother Haran, but Sahar was unable to become pregnant and had no children. So one day Terah took his son Abram, his daughter-in-law, and his son, which is his wife, and his grandson Lot, and moved away from Ur, and he was headed for the land of Canaan, but they stopped and settled there. Terah lived for 205 years, and he died while they were in Haran. So this really kind of gives you like the family tree of everything. Now, Genesis 12, the call of Abram. The Lord had said to Abram, "Leave your native country, your relatives, your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram departed as the Lord had instructed, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he had left Haran. He took his wife Sarah, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all the people he had taken into his household of Haran, and headed for the land of Canaan. When they arrived in Canaan, Abram traveled through the land as far as Shechem. Then he set up camp beside the oak of Moreh. At that time, the area was inhabited by Canaanites. When the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I will give you this land to your descendants." And Abram built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord, who had appeared to him. After that, Abram traveled south, set up camp in the hill country, with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. There he built another altar and dedicated it to the Lord, and he worshipped the Lord. Then Abram continued traveling south by stages toward the Negev. Abram and Sahar in Egypt. At that time, with severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram to go to Egypt, where he lived as a foreigner. As he is approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife Sahar, "Look, you are a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her. So please tell them you are my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of the intercess in you.'" And sure enough, when Abram arrived in Egypt, everyone noticed Sahara's beauty. When the palace officials saw her, they sang her praises to Pharaoh, their king, and Sahara was taken into his palace. Then the Pharaoh gave Abram many gifts because of her: sheep, goats, cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord sent terrible plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sahar, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh summoned Abraham and accused him sharply. "What have you done to me?" he demanded. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister and allow me to take her as my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and get out of here." Pharaoh ordered some of his men to escort him and sent Abram out of the country along with his wife and all his possessions. So Abram left Egypt and traveled north to the Negev, along with his wife and Lot, and they all and with all that they owned. Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. From the Negev they continued traveling by stages towards Bethel, and they pitched their tents between Bethel and Ai, where they had camped before. This was the same place where Abram had built the altar, and there he had worshipped the Lord again. Lot, who was traveling with Abram, had become very wealthy with flocks of sheep and goats, herds of cattle, and many tents. But the land could not support both Abram and Lot, with all their flocks and herds living so close together. So disputes broke out between the herdsmen of Abram and Lot. At that time, the Canaanites and Perizzites were living in the land. Finally, Abram said to Lot, "Let's not allow this conflict come between us and our herdsmen. After all, we are close relatives. The whole countryside is open to you. Take your choice of any section of the land that you want, and we'll separate. If you want the land to the left, then I'll go to the land on the right. If you prefer the land on the right, then I'll go to the left." Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley in the direction of Zar. The whole area was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord of the beautiful land, garden of the Lord, or the beautiful land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot chose for himself the whole Jordan Valley to the east of them. He went there with his flock and servants and parted company with his uncle Abram. So Abram settled in the land of Canaan, and Lot moved his tents to a place near Sodom and settled among the cities of the plain. But the people of this area were extremely wicked and constantly sinned against the Lord. After Lot had gone, and the Lord said to Abram, "Look, as far as you can see in every direction, north and south, east and west, I am giving all this land as far as you can see to you and your descendants as a permanent possession. And I will give you so many descendants that like the dust of the earth, they cannot be counted. Go and walk through the land in every direction, for I am giving it to you." So Abram moved his camp to Hebron and settled near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. Then he built another altar to the Lord. So I'm going to stop there for a second. There's a lot that's going on, right? And I tend to think of this as a moment where a lot of us are building our lives. We're building our lives, and we're having kids, and we're moving houses, and we're going here and there. Some of you, I'm sure, have moved different states with your families, and you've gotten married, and you moved away from your family. Maybe you're in a completely different state. There's so many different things. So he's really setting up the tone, but he's also following what the Lord is telling him to do. And there's really no question in it. And I think about it during this time, there was really no reason to question it. So think about that for a second. So chapter 14, Abram rescues Lot. About this time, war had broke out in the region. The king of the Babylonian and the king of Elsar, the king of Enam, and the king of Goam fought against the king Biram of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Edom, and the king of Zubin, and the king of Bela, also called Zar. This second group of kings joined forces in Siddim Valley, that is the valley of the Dead Sea. For 12 years they had been subject to King Chedorlaomer. In the 13th year they rebelled against him. It's a lot of kings. 1 year later, Chedorlaomer and his allies arrived and defeated the Rephaites at Aster and the Zoots at Ham, and the Emites and the Herodes at Mount Seir, as far as Ephraim at the edge of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to Isaphat, now called Kadesh, and conquered all the territory of the Amalekites and also the Amorites, living in Hazanian Tamar. Then the rebel kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Adam, Zudam, and Bela prepared for battle in the valley of the Dead Sea. They fought against the king, and it was King Lamar, King Tidum, King Babylonian, and Elsar, the 4 kings against 5. As it happened, the valley of the Dead Sea was filled with tar pits, and as the army of the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into the tar pits, while the rest escaped into the mountains. The victorious invaded, then plundered Sodom and Gomorrah and headed for home, taking with them all the spoils of war and food supplies. They also captured Lot, Abram's nephew, who lived in Sodom, and carried off everything he owned. But one of Lot's men escaped and reported everything to Abram the Hebrew, who was living near the oak grove belonging to Mamre the Amorite. Mamre and his relatives, Eshcol and Aner, were Abram's allies. When Abram heard that his nephew Lot had been captured, he mobilized the 318 trained men who had been born in the household. Then he pursued his army until he caught up with them at dawn. There he divided his men and attacked during the night. So Chedorlaomer's army fled, but Abram chased them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. Excuse me. Abram recovered all the goods that had been taken, and he brought back his nephew Lot with his possessions and all the women and other captives. So Melchizedek blesses Abram. After Abram had returned from his victory from all of the allies, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shevev. And Melchizedek, the king of Shalem, and the priest of God's Most High, brought Abram some bread and wine. Melchizedek blessed Abram with this blessing: Blessed by Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has defeated your enemies for you. Then Abram gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the goods he had recovered. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Give back my people who were captured, but you may keep for yourself all the goods that you have recovered. Abram replied to the king of Sodom, I solemnly swear to the Lord God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will not take so much as a single thread or sandal thong from what belongs to you. Otherwise, you might say, I am the one who made Abram rich. I will accept only what my young warriors have already eaten, and I request that you give a fair share of the goods to my allies, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. The Lord's covenant promise to Abram. Sometime later, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him, Do not be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you, and your reward will be great. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? Since you've given me no children, Ezer of Damascus, a servant in my household, will inherit all of my wealth. You have given me no descendants of my own, so one of my servants will be my heir. Then the Lord said to him, No, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own who will be your heir. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him, Look up to the sky and count the stars if you can. That's how many descendants you will have. And Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord counted him as the righteous because of his faith. Then the Lord told him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of Chaldees to give you this land and your possession. But Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, how can I be sure that I'll actually possess it? The Lord told him, Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. So Abram presented all of these to him and killed them. Then he cut each animal down the middle and laid the halves side by side. He did not, however, cut the birds in half. Some vultures swooped down to eat the carcasses, but Abram chased them away. As the sun was going down, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a terrifying darkness came down over him. Then the Lord said to Abram, You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in the foreign land, where you will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. After 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land, for the sins of the Amorites do not warrant their destruction. After the sun went down and darkness fell, Abram saw a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants, and all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River, and the land now occupied by the Canaanites, Kezites, Candamonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephites, Armites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. So, again, this shows, again, what is going on with Abram and truly the life that he lived, right? God is calling Abraham out of what is familiar to him and what is unknown. And there's so much going on. I mean, you hear about the war, and then Abram has to go get Lot. And, there's there's details of it. There's kind of a little bit of context with it, but it's not a detailed explanation. And there's not so much of a timeline. It's kind of just like, go and do these things. And this is how the covenant really begins. It's not necessarily with certainty, right? And Abram had asked him, like, how am I going to know for sure that I'm going to have all of this? And I'm sorry if I'm butchering these names. These names are really hard to pronounce. So now we're in 16. We still have some ways to go. I hope you're still with me. The birth of Ishmael. Now Sarah, Abram's wife, had not been able to bear children, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarah said to Abram, the Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her. And Abram agreed with Sarah's proposal. So Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as his wife. This happened 10 years after Abram had settled and led into the land of Canaan. So Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress, Sarah, with contempt. Then Sarah said to Abram, this is all your fault. I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show who's wrong, you or me. Abram replied, look, she is your servant, so you deal with her as you see fit. Then Sarah treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. The angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness along the road to Shur. The angel said to her, Hagar, Sarah's servant, where have you come from and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah, she replied. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her authority. Then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. And the angel also said, you are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael, which means God hears. For the Lord has heard your cry of distress. The son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a wild donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all his relatives. Therefore, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord, who had spoken to her. She said, you are the God who sees me. She also said, have I truly seen the one who sees me? So that well was named Beer-lahai, which means well of the living one who sees me. It can still be found between Kadesh and Beerd. So Hagar gave Abram a son, and Abram named him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. I think it's really interesting in that chapter. You talk about the birth of Ishmael, and very similar to people that have surrogates. It's kind of like that's what's going on, but they didn't have the technology then. So it's very similar. And I find it interesting that Sarah would, in a sense, blame Abram. Like, you told him and now you're mad. So it's something that I find it interesting because it's something that you can relate to in things that we're kind of seeing in the world today, just in a different time. I find things really interesting, and I think one of the things that I like to do and I like to understand is that the things that we read inside of this amazing book is that there's always going to be a reference in what we're living in now. It may be slightly different, but it's the same things. War, famine, people doing wicked things, surrogates, people having other people's babies. You think about that, and those are things that happen now too. And so when I hear people say that the Bible is not relatable, it truly is if you read each sentence like we're doing. Chapter 17. Abram is named Abraham. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai, King Almighty. Serve me faithfully and live a blameless life. I will make a covenant with you by which I will guarantee to give you countless descendants. At this, Abram fell face down on the ground. Then God said to him, This is my covenant with you. I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. What's more, I am changing your name. It will no longer be Abram. Instead, you will be called Abraham. For you will be the father of many nations. I will make you extremely fruitful. Your descendants will become many nations, and kings will be among them. I will confirm my covenant with you and your descendants after you from generation to generation. This is the everlasting covenant. I will always be your God and the God of your descendants after you. I will give you the entire land of Canaan, where you now live as a foreigner, to you and your descendants. It will be their possession forever, and I will be their God. Then God said to Abram, Your responsibility to obey the terms of the covenant. You and your descendants have this continual responsibility. This is the covenant that you and your descendant must keep. Each male among you must be circumcised. You must cut off the flesh of your foreskin as a sign of the covenant between you and me. From generation to generation, each male child must be circumcised on the 8th day after his birth. This applies not only to members of your family, but also to the servants born in your household and the foreign-born servants whom you have purchased. All must be circumcised. Your bodies will bear the mark of my everlasting covenant. Any male who fails to be circumcised will be cut off from the covenant family for breaking the covenant. That's really interesting. I'll be honest with you. I believe that I've read that before, but that's really interesting, right? So those who choose not to, you're breaking the covenant from thousands of years ago. Sahar is named Sarah. When God said to Abram regarding Sahar, your wife, her name will no longer be Sahar. From now on, her name will be Sarah. And I will bless her and give you a son from her. Yes, I will bless her richly, and she will become the mother of many nations. Kings of nations will be among her descendants. Then Abraham bowed down to the ground, and he laughed to himself in disbelief. How could I become a father at the age of 100, he thought, and how could Sarah have a baby when she is 90 years old? So Abraham said to God, May Ishmael live under your special blessing. But God replied, No. Sarah, your wife, will give birth to a son for you. You will name him Isaac, and I will confirm my covenant with him and his descendants as an everlasting covenant. As for Ishmael, I will bless him also, just as you have asked. I will make him extremely fruitful and multiply his descendants. He will become the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will be confirmed with Isaac, who will be born to you and Sarah about this time next year. When God had finished speaking, he left Abraham. On that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and every male in his household, including those born there and those he had bought. Then he circumcised them, cutting off their foreskins just as God had told him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised, and Ishmael his son was 13. Both Abraham and his sons Ishmael were circumcised on the same day, along with all the other men and boys of the household. Whether they were born there or bought as servants, they were all circumcised with him. That's kind of crazy. Ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Chapter 18. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the oak grove belonging to the Mamre. One day Abraham was sitting at the entrance of his tent during the hottest part of the day. He looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. "My lord," he said, "if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of the tree while water is brought to wash your feet. And since you've honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your journey." "All right," they said. "Do as they've said." So Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah, "Hurry, get 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough, and bake some bread." Then Abraham ran out of the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to his servant, who quickly prepared it. When the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt and milk and the roasted meat, and he served it to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. "Where is Sarah, your wife?" the visitors asked. "She's inside the tent," Abraham replied. Then one of them said, "I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son." Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent. Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. So she laughed silently to herself and said, "How could a worn-out woman like me enjoy such pleasure, especially when my master, my husband, is also so old?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, can an old woman like me have a baby? Is there anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, and she denied it, saying, "I didn't laugh." But the Lord said, "No, you did laugh." I find that really funny. I find it really funny that they've included this part and just the conversations. So Abraham intercedes for Sodom. Then the men had gotten up from their meal and looked out toward Sodom. As they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way. "Should I hide my plan from Abraham?" the Lord asked. "For Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham and all that I have promised." So the Lord told Abraham, "I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin is so flagrant. I'm going down to see if their actions are as wicked as I've heard. If not, I want to know." The other men turned and headed toward Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham. Abraham approached him and said, "Will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 righteous people living in the city. Will you sweep it away and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying the righteous along with the wicked. Why would you be treating the righteous and the wicked exactly the same? You wouldn't want to do that. Should not the judge of all the earth do what is right?" And the Lord replied, "If I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake." Then Abram spoke again, "Since I have begun, let me speak further to my Lord, even though I am dust and ashes. Suppose there are only 45 righteous people rather than 50. Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? The Lord said, "I will not destroy if I find 45 righteous." Then Abraham passed his request further. "Suppose there are only 40. And the Lord replied, "I will not destroy for the sake of 40. But please don't be angry, my Lord." Abraham pleaded, "Let me speak. Suppose there's only 30 righteous people." The Lord replied, "I will not destroy if there are 30. Then Abraham said, "Since I have dared to speak, let me continue. Suppose there's only 20. And the Lord replied, "I will not destroy for the sake of 20. Finally, Abraham said, "Lord, please don't be angry if I speak one more time. Suppose there's only 10. And the Lord replied, "Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. When the Lord had finished his conversation with Abraham, he went on his way, and Abraham returned to his tent. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that. Because as we're going through this, right, he's questioning God. He's like, okay, well, if there's 55, will you do it? If there's 50, if there's 45, there's 40. Like, he's doing this back and forth, right? And he believed him, and Abraham wasn't perfect. He doubted, he questions, he made mistakes, but the righteousness became through belief, not his behavior. And faith isn't really knowing how, it's trusting who, right? And I love that he's having this back and forth conversation with him, because it's very similar to the things that we question with God. Like, okay, God, well, is this going to happen today or tomorrow? Okay, and when it happens, okay, is it going to be good or is it going to be bad? Is it going to be plentiful or is it going to be not enough? So it shows that it's okay to question the Lord. Now, we may not always get the answers. Abraham was getting answers, but we may not always get the answers to what it is that we're looking for, but it gives us the ability to question. So chapter 19, Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed. That evening, the two angels came to the entrance to the city of Sodom. Lot was sitting there, and when he saw them, he stood up to meet them. When he welcomed them and bowed his face to the ground, "My lords," he said, "come to my home to wash your feet and be my guests for the night. You may then get up early in the morning and be on your way." "Oh, no," they replied. "We'll just spend the night out here in the city square." But Lot insisted. So at last they went home with him. Lot prepared a feast, complete with fresh made bread without yeast, and they ate. And before they retired for the night, all the men of Sodom, young and old, came from all over the city and surrounded the house. They shouted to Lot, "Where are the men who came to spend the night with you? Bring them out so we can have sex with them." So Lot stepped outside to talk to them, shutting the door behind him. "Please, my brothers," he begged, "don't do such a wicked thing. Look, I have 2 virgin daughters. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them as you wish. But please leave these men alone, for they are my guests and under my protection." "Stand back," they shouted. "This fellow came to town as an outsider, and now he's acting like our judge. We'll treat you far worse than those other men." And they lunged towards Lot to break down the door. But the 2 angels reached out and pulled Lot into the house and bolted the door. Then they blinded all the men, young and old, who were at the door of the house, so they gave up trying to get inside. Meanwhile, the angels questioned Lot. "Do you have any other relatives here in the city?" they asked. "Get them out of this place, your sons-in-laws, your daughters, and anyone else, for we are about to destroy this city completely. The outcry against this place is so great, it has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it." So Lot rushed out his daughters to tell his daughters' fiancés, "Quick, get out of the city. The Lord is about to destroy it." But the young men thought he was only joking. At dawn the next morning, the angels came insistent. "Hurry," he said to Lot. "Take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here. Get out right now, or you'll be swept away in the destruction of the city." When Lot still hesitated, the angel seized his hand and the hands of his wife and his 2 daughters and rushed them to safely outside the city, for the Lord was merciful. When they were safely out of the city, one of the angels ordered, "Run for your lives and don't look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains or you will be swept away." "Oh no, my lord," Lot begged. "You have been so gracious to me and saved my life and have shown such great kindness, but I cannot go to the mountains. Disaster will catch up to me there and I will soon die. See, there is a small village nearby. Please let me go there instead. Don't you see how small it is? Then my life will be saved." "All right," the angel said. "I will grant your request. I will not destroy the little village, but hurry, escape to it, for I can do nothing until you arrive there." And this explains why the village known as Zar means little place. Lot reached the village just as the sun was rising over the horizon. Then the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the sky on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed them, along with the other cities and the villages of the plain, wiping out all the people and every bit of vegetation. But Lot's wife looked back as she was following behind him, and she turned into a pillar of salt. Abraham got up early that morning and hurried out to the place where he had stood in the Lord's presence. He looked out across the plain towards Sodom and Gomorrah and watched as the columns of smoke rose from the cities like smoke from a furnace. But God had listened to Abraham's request and kept Lot safe, removing him from the disaster that engulfed the cities on the plain. After Lot had left Zar because he was afraid of the people there, he went to live in the cave in the mountains with his 2 daughters. One day the daughter said to his sister, There are no men left anywhere in this entire area, so we can't get married like everyone else. And our father soon, too, is too old to have children. Come, let's get him drunk with wine, and we'll have sex with him. That way we will preserve our family line through our father." So that night they got him drunk, and the older daughter went and had intercourse with her father. He was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. The next morning, the older daughter said to her younger sister, "I had sex with our father last night. Let's get him drunk with wine again, and you go in and have sex with him. That way we'll preserve our family line through our father." So that night they got him drunk with wine, and the younger daughter went in and had intercourse with him. As before, he was unaware of her lying down or getting up. As a result, both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their own father. When the older daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Moab. He became the ancestor of the nation known as the Moabites. When the younger daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Ben-Ammi. He became the ancestor of the nation known as the Ammonites. I mean, you know what I'm going to say here, right? And when I think about it, I think about Lot and his family were living in Sodom. So what did the daughters see, right? What were they being taught? What were they being shown? So to them, this was the best way. And again, going back to, there isn't a lot of people at this time. There isn't millions and billions of people. I mean, we're talking about a small amount of people during this time. And there's a lot of things that are happening with it. And we have so many more chapters to go, but I am going to stop here for today and leave you with a couple things, right? And that is that through the things that we have read, through the trials, through the wars, through the changing, so many different things happening. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah just being completely just wrecked. And we all know the story of Lot's wife, right? Of her turning around. I mean, the angels were very distinctive in what they said. Like, you have to go and don't look back. And I think back to, this time in, history. And I think back to, you really don't have anything else to go off of. So you really have to trust what it is that they're saying. And again, she didn't fully trust it. And it leads me to believe that if God revealed everything at once to us, especially with things that we're asking or what the future holds or what's going to happen next in the world or what's going to happen next in our lives and our families' lives, I think we would panic, we would overthink, we would try to control it, and we would really just depend on ourselves and not the Lord's strength. And I watched something yesterday that is very similar to what we're talking about today. It's a lot of us talk about if we have something that's going on or if we have a question that we want answered, we tend to say we're giving it to God. And we go, we put it at his feet, we pray about it. But the moment we're done praying, we pick it back up and take it with us. And I think it's really important to understand that if you're going to give something to him, give it to him fully and release it from yourself and trust that whatever he's going to do with it, it's going to be for your good, whether or not you like the outcome or not. And when this comes to leadership and just leading in general in your life, right? You need to move before things are really clear sometimes, and you really need to trust God's timing. I think a lot of times we confuse delay with a denial, but sometimes things have to be delayed. And I know for me, in the last year, I've had a lot of different times of discernment, a lot of different times where I've been thinking about something and I may get a vision of something and I'm like, oh, that's, I wonder if that's for right now. And most of the time it's not. And we need to understand what this looks like in the waiting. You may see things. And I was talking to Michelle the other day, and maybe it's something that you guys can help me with. There's been certain things that have happened and instances that have happened. And even though I know the truth of when it happened in the timeline of how it happened, could other people get delayed in that revelation? And I know that might sound really confusing, but I really think there is. I think that there is something could be happening in your life, right? And maybe you're not sharing it with a lot of people. Maybe it's just between you and God. And then it could be 6 months down the road, could be a year down the road, someone that you're, is faith-filled and, is, part of your circle can come to you and say, hey, like, God was telling me about this. Like, do you know anything about this? And maybe that's something then you share with them then. I think that there's always going to be some type of delay, but it's not denial, right? And you don't have to see the whole staircase to know that you just need to take the next step. And I truly believe that that is what we're being taught in these verses. As some of us are younger and building our lives and we're kind of going through the day-to-day. Some of us are older and you're still building your lives, but it looks a little bit different, right? Very similar to Abraham and Sarah, being so old and then having a child. Sarah was like, ha! And I can imagine some of our, older people on here thinking about that. And it's, how many times have, you've been asked something or told something by God and you kind of chuckled of like, ha, yeah, okay, sure. And it teaches us that you can still be called and still be afraid of it. You can be chosen and still unsure, and you can be obedient but still confused. So it's not, you really need to have confidence in what God is walking you through, what he's walking you through. And I have a couple reflection questions. We will pick this back up in chapter 20 of Genesis next week to round out the month. But the questions that I have is, where is God asking you to move even though you want clarity first? That's a tough one for me. That's a tough one because I like to be clear, concise, and plan. I like to know what's going on beforehand. I don't want any little surprises. What have you delayed because you don't fully understand? And are you truly trusting God's timing? Or are you trying to rush the process? I think if anything, me trusting God's timing is something he's been working on me in the last couple of years for sure. I know not to rush his process because things truly unfold in the manner and the time that they need to be revealed. So, thank you for joining me today. I know it's a little bit longer. We almost went an hour, but I think it's really important as we're reading the Bible in a year that we take this time and we thoroughly read each word that is in here. And some of it can be very uncomfortable, right? I don't know about you, but some of these things I'm like, wait, what? What? And it makes me chuckle a little bit, but it's the truth. It's the truth that we're reading in here and the lessons that we can learn. And even though it's thousands and thousands of years ago, it is still relevant to an extent to each and every one of our lives today. So thank you for joining me. And if you guys need to go over it again, go ahead and read through it again this week, and we'll pick back up next week. And I hope you have a beautiful week, and also happy MLK Day. And thank you so much for joining me.